Howdy, this is The Views from the Shop Podcast. I'm your host, your one and only host, Tim Miller. And today, it is Sunday, March 22nd, 2026. And I wish you a very, very, very happy, as young as you feel day. Well, on today's show, it's going to get controversial. And you may disagree with a lot of the things that I have to say. And I will preface that up front by saying I may say some things here that, you know what, you're not catching my drift and you don't agree and you think I'm just flat out wrong. And if that's the case, I'm totally fine with that. I want you to hit the comments on YouTube, hit the comments on Spotify, hit me up on my DMs. I don't care. Do whatever you got to do. Express your opinions. That's totally fine. But we've got a lot of people talking about Ohio State basketball expectations, and the fan base in general. And quite frankly, you know what I'm focused on more than anything right now? It's the fact that we have so many people talking about the fan base, talking about how people should feel, and those people maybe don't have the best pulse on the fan base. Those people maybe aren't as qualified to gauge what the fan base thinks and gauge what the fan base says as much as someone like me. Of course, as you know, on the Views from the Shop podcast, the only podcast that previews and reviews every single game Ohio State plays. We cover the portal no matter the time of year. We're covering Ohio State basketball, recruiting, and even having coaches, players, other staff members, former players, and stuff like that on the show throughout the summer as well. So that's why you should subscribe. Another reason you might subscribe at this point on Substack specifically, you can get a 1-week trial. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you see what's included in the insider subscriber chat. That's where I'm dropping news, nuggets, notes, especially this time of year on the transfer portal. And then you can also just go to viewsfromtheshoppodcast.substack.com. When you go there, posted an article yesterday called Falling into the Future, kind of talking about, hey, what's going on with Ohio State basketball? What are they going to focus on this offseason, including a general manager, including looking at coaching churn, including roster retention and portal plans as well. Whole bunch of other written content there on the Substack. Again, that's viewsfromtheshoppodcast.substack.com. Highly recommend you get there. Like the video if you're watching on YouTube, please. That helps a lot. Comment on YouTube as well your thoughts on what I'm about to say. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Again, the only Ohio State basketball exclusive podcast covering the Buckeyes year-round. And today, we will get into a controversial topic. It's something that I've been wanting to touch on and decided that now is the best time to do it, especially with comments from Mark Titus, comments from other people on the beat for Ohio State football, now kind of dipping their toes in Ohio State basketball. So here's where we're at, okay? Thank you for being here, by the way. Here's where we're at, okay? So Ohio State loses an NCAA tournament game as a 2.5-point favorite. They lose very, very close. And the conversation before the game is even over is fire the coach, fire Jake Diebler, complaining about Dusty May and Coach Cal and Pat Kelsey or whoever you wanted to get hired at Ohio State when Ohio State moved on from Chris Holtmann and then selected Jake Diebler as its next head coach. And quite frankly, I think that the reaction at large from the fan base says more about the state of the fan base than it does the state of the program. And I'm going to preface this by saying right now, okay, there's a disconnect here because there are two different types of fans, I believe, in the Ohio State basketball fan base. Number one, there's the what I would call the basket buck sickos, okay? The Ohio State basketball sickos, the ones who eat, breathe, sleep Ohio State basketball. They are all in on the Buckeyes. That's probably you. If you're watching this show, if you're listening to the show, especially if you're in the Substack, that's you. I've got some people in the insider subscriber chat who have said, I'm more of an Ohio State basketball fan than I am an Ohio State football fan. And that's very uncommon. Most people are much more hardcore on the football side and more casual observers on the basketball side. So that's the one side. You've got your diehards. You've also got your casual fans. And the term casual in 2026 in sports is used as a derogatory term, right? Like it's used to put someone down and say you don't know ball or you're just not a true fan of a team. And that's not how I define casuals. I don't think there's any problem with being a casual, okay? Also, hand up front, I'm a casual when it comes to the NBA. I don't watch the regular season. I don't really care to watch the regular season. Even to this point in the year, I have not watched a single NBA basketball game this year. And you may say that I'm not qualified to cover the Ohio State basketball team because of that, and that's totally fine. I don't really know what's going on with Bryce Sensabaugh right now. I don't really know where Malachi Branham is. Keita Bates-Diop, I don't even know if he's still in the NBA. I'm not a big NBA guy. But when the postseason comes around and the conference finals come around, the NBA finals, I loved watching the Pacers and Thunders last year. That was fun. Indiana, OKC, Pacers, Thunders. That's a Pacers, Thunder. That's a fun matchup for me to watch. I'm all in. But you know what I don't do? I don't go on Twitter and I don't go on this podcast and start making huge, just sensational judgments on the NBA because I'm not an expert there. However, what you have here is we have casual fans who are judging Ohio State basketball through, 1-2 games throughout the year. In my opinion, this is my opinion, okay? You don't get to be quiet from November through February, and then when March rolls around, you get to suddenly become the loudest voice in the room when March Madness hits and when Ohio State plays a game against TCU. When you don't have context, what do? We default to the easiest and laziest take there is, which is fire the head coach. And now, again, I will preface by saying there are diehards who don't believe in Jake Diebler. There are diehards who never believed in Jake Diebler from the time that he was hired through now. There are also diehards who said, kind of like me, I would be in this boat where I said, you know what? Jake Diebler was not my number one choice for head coach at Ohio State, but I'm willing to see where this goes. I think that he eats, breathes, sleeps, everything. Ohio State basketball. I think his background, I think he fits the mold of an Ohio State basketball coach, and I like that. Now, will there be some growing pains? Yes, I expect that, but I'm willing to wait this out and see what happens. And then there's others who would say, I'm a diehard and I love Jake Diebler, and I think he's going to be the right fit. If you're in any of those categories, that's totally fine with me. But my problem with the fan base are the people who have never heard of Alex Smith, don't remember him committing to Ohio State, really don't even know who Anthony Thompson is, maybe hadn't heard of Colin White until the first time Ohio State played Michigan after that Indiana game, who, again, I would say from just conversations, I think he probably regrets what he said heading into that first Michigan game. And there are Michigan fans heading into that game who, Barstool picks it up and so many other people take his quote and they say, who? And that's cool. I'm good with that. But Ohio State fans are even saying that. They're commenting on stuff saying, who? Colin White? Look, if you don't know who Colin White is, if you don't follow the team year round, if you're not all in on recruiting, and you decide to just, kind of find a back row seat in a pretty packed out fan base already, and then shout from the back row, fire Diebler after it's halftime. Ohio State's down by 16 against TCU. I think that's where the problem is within the fan base, is that we have to contrast the diehards from the March only fans, and it's the March only fans who really want to get after it and talk about Jake Diebler. And again, there's fans who are diehards and they don't believe in Jake Diebler. I'm not talking to you on this, but I think that we are kind of in a spot right now where the popularity of Twitter and burners, and now people just act like they're sources on things on Twitter. And because of that, because we can post whatever we want and say whatever we want as many times as we want, the discourse on Ohio State basketball and Jake Diebler specifically, it gets really, really lazy. I think the fire the coach in any sport on any team, it's become the most low effort opinion in sports. You cannot evaluate a head coach through 280 characters and a box score. That's just not how this works. It's essentially as if it's my birthday party, okay? And you've kind of been sitting in the corner, not really socializing with anyone for the first 2 hours. And then I decide, hey, to close off this birthday party, you're going to spin me around a couple times, you're going to blindfold me, and I'm going to take a stick and go hit a piñata, okay? That's the plan now. And then all of a sudden, you burst up out of your seat in the corner, and you throw your plate and your drink, your punch, and your cake, You say, I don't need this anymore. I want to hit the pinata. It's my time to shine, baby. It's my turn. And you take the stick out of my hands and you just start wailing on that pinata. And all the while, myself and others who are all in on Ohio State basketball, and my birthday at this point, are saying, what is this guy on? Like, what are we doing here, bro? This is not about you. That's how I envision fans at times who will just say, fire Diebler, or could have had Coach Cal, or could have had Dusty May, or hire Utah State's head coach, or hire whoever's head coach at this point in the year. What you're not seeing is you're not seeing what happened against Grambling State. You did not watch Ohio State play, I don't know, against App State. And you probably even missed Ohio State play at Iowa, February 26th at 9 p.m. It's a late tip-off and the Buckeyes get blown out. Those fans who want to get all hot and bothered about Jake Diebler conveniently when it's March and conveniently when everyone else is talking about it, I can't take your opinion very seriously. I mean, we're using football writers at this point to form opinions on basketball when those same football writers said months ago, I don't really pay attention to Ohio State basketball anymore because they're not that good. Dave Biddle said that, and guess who else said that? Doug Lesmerises. He said that before, okay? It's public and it's out there, but now that he wants to take the side of the fans and because it's attractive and it's popular and it's going to get you clicks and all that stuff, which I don't even disagree with what Doug has to say. It's just the way that we're going about forming our opinions, I'm not behind that. What fans are not seeing when you're tuning in a couple games per year is you're not seeing the development. I personally was very critical of Jake Diebler after Ohio State lost to Iowa. I was very critical of Jake Diebler. I was very critical of the staff. And I went off. On that entire recap episode talking about how Jake Diebler got punched once by Ben McCollum against Iowa, and it was a knockout blow. He did not get up. Iowa took a timeout 5 minutes into that game, and from there they went on a 35-9 run for the final 15 minutes of the first half, and they blew out Ohio State. And what happened the second time Ohio State played Iowa in the Big Ten tournament was Jake Diebler got punched, and he punched back. And then he got punched, and he punched back. Body blow, jab. And before long, Ohio State would win that game. Iowa fans would probably say they should have won that game, which I wouldn't disagree with that necessarily. Things really fell apart down the stretch, but Jake Diebler was able to right the ship enough in order to win that game. And I think that shows progress. I think that shows growth. And I think that coaching is not just game management. It's more nuance than what we're able to see. What even I'm able to see. You know what you didn't hear about, or what I didn't hear about this year compared to last year? What's going on in the locker room. Even after the loss to TCU, a lot of guys were talking about how connected the team was. Jake Diebler says that. You may want to throw up because of the amount of times you hear the word connected from Jake Diebler in press conferences. But I think this team was really bonded this year. Last year, was it? I don't know. Did a player leave 10 games into the season? Yeah. Was there another player on the team who would just show up to practice sometimes and other times not and maybe get into some legal trouble here and there? Yeah, that happened too. And there was none of that this year. So I think that that's improvement. I think that you're seeing improvement in recruiting and relationships. Ohio State has the best recruit that it's had since D'Angelo Russell coming in as a freshman next season, and Anthony Thompson. And we're also looking at NIL limitations for Ohio State basketball. I've talked about that enough. But I think evaluation is nuanced. I think that if you're judging a 12-month job over 3 seconds at the end of Ohio State TCU or a 40-minute game of Ohio State TCU, I just think it's misguided. The problem is not upset fans. Fans have every right to be upset, and they should be upset with where Ohio State basketball is right now. The problem isn't upset fans. The problem is fans who are selectively upset based on one game's outcome. I've said this entire year that, hey, look, one game is about 3% of the season. So I think one game should take about 3% of your opinion. And the biggest game, even in March, maybe it takes a little bit more, and I'm fine with that. But you have 30 plus games to form your opinion of this Ohio State team. And we have people coming in down the stretch who either one, already hated Jake Diebler and will never root for Jake Diebler, or two, just weren't paying attention enough to know what's going on. And they say, well, this team's not very good. They lost to TCU. Never thought TCU was good. And look, should Ohio State have lost to TCU? Maybe, maybe not. As that game got closer and closer, I even said on the recap show, I thought more about the talent Ohio State has over TCU, and I thought more about the talent that Jamie Dixon probably has over Jake Diebler. Jamie Dixon coaching 32 NCAA tournament games now after the loss to Duke yesterday. Jake Diebler coached 1 NCAA tournament game in his career. The difference there ended up being the difference in that game, I think. And I think it's more nuanced than what really a lot of fans are willing to admit. Now, I can feel the tension rising. I can feel you wanting to start yelling at me. I like, that's totally fine. Let me address something now, okay? Two things can be true at the same time, because you may think that I'm going one way with this, and I'm not. I'm about to pivot hard. We're about to swerve, pull you. I don't know, however you want to call it. Two things can be true at the same time. This season for Ohio State was a step forward, and at the same time, this Ohio State basketball program is not where it needs to be. That's not the popular opinion, so no one really wants to say it. No one really wants to sit on the fence. They want to have a definitive opinion, but again, I think it's just more nuanced than that. I think that we can be willing to say as a fan base that Ohio State is not where it should be. At the same time, there were steps of improvement. You look at what happened last year. Ohio State finishes, 17-15 or something like that? Misses out on the NCAA tournament, or 18-15, something like that. They're one of the first 4 teams out of the NCAA tournament. And for the past several years, whether it be under Chris Holtmann or Jake Diebler, they've either been way off the bubble or on the so far outside of the bubble that they're just trying to play their way onto the bubble. That's where Ohio State has been. And what did Ohio State do this year? They didn't back into the NCAA tournament like an NC State did, or a St. Louis did, or other teams like that who lost a lot of games down the stretch in comparison to how they played in the first 2/3 of the year. That's not what Ohio State did. Ohio State down the stretch played its best basketball. It beat Purdue at home, who won the Big Ten tournament, by the way. It beat Iowa in the Big Ten tournament, another quad 1 win that it would pick up. Iowa, as of recording, getting ready to play a game in the NCAA tournament. They pull off a big upset. Cool. Good luck to Iowa against Florida. You saw the crushing win over Penn State, just doing what you're supposed to do. They didn't play with their food against Penn State, and a very, very easy game to look ahead to Indiana, which was the next game after Penn State. They crushed Penn State. They crushed Wisconsin down the stretch. Ohio State was playing its best basketball heading in the NCAA tournament. By the way, they lost to a Michigan team that looks like it will continue to be the most dominant team in the nation. Maybe it wins the tournament. Maybe it doesn't. They lost to that team by 4. And I'm not here to parade a moral victory, losing by 4 to your arch rivals when you had your, 3rd chance to beat them this season and you still couldn't do it. I'm not going to throw a parade over that, but at the same time, I'm willing to recognize the growth that Ohio State showed in March. And Jake Diebler got this team playing its best. It's got a 5-star in Anthony Thompson coming in. It was better in close games this season. Was it great? No, but it was better than it was last season, was Ohio State. It makes the NCAA tournament for the first time in 4 years. Bruce Thornton gets to go dance. So those were improvements. What's still lacking? The ceiling for Ohio State. No one came into this season really thinking this team is going to make a Final Four run. No one came into the season really saying, Ohio State, yeah, I think this team's going to make a run in the Big Ten tournament, maybe be playing on Sunday. No one said that. I think our best case scenario for those really, really close to the team would say, if everything goes right, and if Christoph Tilly ends up being as good as we'd like him to be, and Amari Bynum breaks out, and Brandon Old can take the step from the Horizon League to the Big Ten, maybe this team can make a Sweet 16. I don't think anyone was saying anything more than that. So the ceiling is lacking. I think the consistency in play at times is lacking as well. And there's certainly roster gaps too. I mean, you've got Bruce Thornton, you've got John Malou Jr., you've got Devin Royal that you retained from last year coming into this season. And how good was Brandon Knoll this year? He missed a lot of time, and I really liked him at times, but certainly there were some disappointments there, and I think a lot of that comes from injury, but you still look at him. You look at Ivan Nagovin and his development. You look at Gabe Cupps, a swing and a miss, and there are roster gaps, and there's certainly gaps in talent evaluation. The past 2 years under Jake Diebler, there have been swings, and there have been way more misses than home runs or doubles or singles in the portal at this point. That's certainly something that you and I and everyone should be critical of. But my entire point with this is that we can recognize where Ohio State has come from while also saying, hey, this team is not where it needs to be. This program is not where it needs to be. So that said, the real expectation here, or the real issue here is your expectation versus your investment, I would say, at this point for Ohio State basketball. So a couple questions for you. And you are going to answer this differently. If you're a Buckeye basketball sicko, you're going to answer it differently than the diehards on the football side. And there are way more of them than there are of you if you are a true Ohio State basketball sicko. So my question is, coming into this year, would you have rather had Chris Henry Jr. or would you give him away for a Darian Williams or a Morez Johnson Jr. or whatever the case may be? Would you rather have Jeremiah Smith or Coach Cal, for example? And these aren't one for one. It's not like you can have one or the other. I know the math doesn't work out that way, but it's true. Would you rather have the all-in investment on football and still try to make it work on the basketball side? Or would you be okay with giving up a couple of coaches on the endless coaching staff on the football side if it meant improving the roster on the Ohio State basketball side? NIL is finite. It's not infinite. You don't have endless streams of money to pull from. And because of that, there's a certain amount of the pie that every sport gets, and Ohio State basketball is not immune to that. Ohio State men's basketball at this point is competing with Ohio State football internally for resources. Football drives everything, and I'm never going to argue that it shouldn't be that way, but it's the truth. And this football program has been elite in my entire lifetime. It has been elite, and because of that, it's going to drive everything. Everyone would say that they would like to have a Final Four team on the basketball side for Ohio State, but that's true until it means Ohio State football is playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl this year. That's most of the fan base. And I hear you saying that Ohio State has been elite in both before. That's true. This is a different era. This is not Thad Matta's teams, okay? We have NIL now. That exists. And some athletic departments disperse that money differently. Others have better boosting resources, whatever the case may be, externally. That's all fine and well. But the other thing that's different, too, is high school basketball in Ohio is not the way that it was 15 years ago with Thad Matta. Recruiting is not the same way it was 15 years ago. Anthony Thompson stays in Ohio to play in Ohio. That's very uncommon. Look at Alex Smith coming into Ohio State, playing in Upper Arlington. Where did he play his final year? Prolific Prep. He's going to play in a championship game tonight at 5, or is playing right now by the time that this probably gets posted. So you have that. You've got John Mobley Jr. from Reynoldsburg. He ended up going out west to play his final years of prep ball. So that's very, very common. It's very different. It's a very, very different world. So that's a question that the fan base itself has to kind of ask and answer and think through, is that while I think, yes, it's very possible in theory to be good at basketball and football at the same time, how many programs are we seeing doing that right now? I mean, Vanderbilt's a great example of this, who loses a heartbreaker last night to Nebraska, but has a wonderful season in basketball and had a great season in football. They just decided, hey, we're going to go all in on both, on sports, and they're reaping the rewards. Indiana football, really good. All of a sudden, out of the blue, makes me want to throw up, makes me question everything that's true about this world. Indiana basketball still couldn't make the NCAA tournament. Oregon, traditionally, has been really good at both over the past 10, 15 years. One of the worst teams in the Big Ten this year, while still being good at basketball. Alabama, really good basketball program. Or Oregon, really good at football, by the way. Sorry, misspoke there. Alabama, really good traditionally football. Really good at basketball right now. Football's kind of struggling. Texas, football, really good. Basketball, they're in the Sweet 16. Texas, Vanderbilt, kind of your two examples right now of programs that are doing well on both sides. And even Texas football would say we're not doing well enough. And I think a lot of Texas football fans would sacrifice a Sweet 16 if it meant that they win a national championship in football next year. So all that said, is it possible? Yes. Is it really, really hard to do as well? Yes. But I don't think that's an excuse. I don't think that's an excuse for the Ohio State University. That Block O is recognized throughout the nation. The fan base, the alumni base, all of the resources that Ohio State has to pull from. Yeah, this team should be better than it is, or this program, I should say, should be better than it is. And by the way, there's a difference in team and program. Vanderbilt, traditionally, program-wise, not strong. The team this year was good at basketball. The team this year was good at football. Program-wise, they still need to establish that. So, I guess I close with this. My question is, what should this program be? And you and I, who are all in Ohio State basketball, we will not excuse this, okay? Ohio State basketball should be making Final Four runs. It should have a roster every single year that is capable of making Final Four runs. It should have a roster every single year that is capable of making Big Ten tournament runs and not playing until Friday of the Big Ten tournament. It should be capable of capturing a number 1 seed or number 1 overall seed. We don't care about the AP poll on the Views from the Shop podcast, but it should be top 10 in the AP poll perennially. That is the type of program that this Ohio State basketball program should be. Contending year over year for championships. That doesn't mean it makes a Final Four every year. That doesn't mean it wins the Big Ten every year. That would be crazy expectations because it's very hard to do, especially with the expanded Big Ten. But it does mean that it should be in play for that every single season. So, moving forward, here's what I'll say. This program is not finished. Jake Diebler and the direction of this program, it's not done. Just because Ohio State loses in the NCAA tournament this year doesn't mean it's over and you're starting from scratch. I'm seeing growth. It's just not finished. The coach deserves evaluation. Jake Diebler deserves to get evaluated. The coaching staff deserves to get evaluated. The program deserves to get evaluated, but not with knee-jerk reactions, not whiplashing ourselves into conclusions on Jake Diebler. You want to continue to beat the dead horse of Coach Cal or Dusty May or whoever? Why do you think Ohio State ended up with Jake Diebler? Honestly, think to yourself and just use your own brain for a second. As much as you've heard me and others talk about the NIL resources for Ohio State and Gus Johnson talking about it on national broadcasts as well, do you have enough ideas at this point to see, maybe NIL isn't that attractive? Maybe Coach Cal took Arkansas because he believed that he had a better commitment in terms of NIL from Arkansas than he did Ohio State. Maybe when coaches get a look under the hood at Ohio State, they realize it's not quite as attractive as it once was in this NIL era. Maybe they understand that Ryan Day doesn't want to lose a Caleb Downs, for example, funding for that, and have it get poured into basketball. And because of that, Ohio State hires Jake Diebler. But at the same time, this fan base, you're right to criticize where Ohio State basketball is right now. Ross Bjork has said publicly that he's looking for ways to better support Jake Diebler in the Ohio State men's basketball program. I know you're going to see new ways that Ohio State captures NIL, whether you like the avenue it goes or not. For that, that's up to you. But if you want more money, if you want more NIL, if you want this roster to be more competitive, that's how it has to go. And I also will say those inside the program believe that Ross Bjork is doing the right things. They believe in him. I've been pretty critical of Ross Bjork, like in conversations that I've had. Every time I get pushback on that from multiple different people. They're like, Ross, he's trying to help us. So that said, I think that the trajectory of the program is moving in the right direction, and I think that there's definitely a lot of potential for this program to continue to move in the right direction. But at the same time, right now, the program's not where it should be. Fans should not be happy about where the program is. Both things can be true at the same time. So as people continue to talk about the fan base and where this program is heading and all of those different types of things, we have to recognize that both of these things can be true at the same time. Ohio State basketball is improving, but it's still not where we want it to be. So you may have your opinions. You can drop them in the comments, or you can just dislike the video, I guess, at this point, if you're feeling certainly some type of way. I know it may not be the popular opinion to have, but that's how I feel on the state of Ohio State basketball right now, the state of the fan base, and all of those different types of things. Look, the portal is going to get very busy very quickly. Already today, Ohio State linked to one player coming out of Cornell who's in the portal. Buckeye coaching staff is working hard on the portal right now. I will continue to give you content throughout the portal season and give you more episodes coming up this week. We're going to kind of do a post-mortem of Ohio State basketball 2025-2026. Kind of put a bow on the season, what went wrong, what went right, all those different types of things. So make sure you're subscribed wherever your podcast is, on YouTube as well. Follow on the socials. Until next time, I shut up. Before you shut me off,